Well, welcome everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. And most of all, thank you, Cheri, for joining. Having been asked at very short notice, you put your head up and commented on something on Facebook, and I thought, oh, now I that is a woman I would like to hear more from, because we were on a, co- a small course, an online course on addiction together
Mhm,
a few years
mhm,
ago, and I just always think that that people have that. Some people have that ring of something authentic and something mm, truthful, and I thought that's a woman who knows what she's talking about. So I've never got back to you after that, since that time. So I'm really, really delighted that you've agreed to be the guest for this month's conversation. And yeah, for anyone who's new, my name's Christian McNeill. I run this Facebook group, Three Principles Conversations, and each month rather, we have a fresh guest as to talk about what they understand by the three principles, what they're doing with it. I'm particularly interested at the moment in people who are sharing this work in different settings, whatever that might be. And I'm particularly interested in those that are not headlining every conference, because I don't think it's about that. I think the more we encourage grassroots spread, then the wider it goes, and sometimes those are the most powerful, the most powerful teachers and the most powerful conversations. So again, I'm really delighted and pleased that you accepted at very short notice to do this. I would love, just to hear more about your story, your life, because I don't know. I know little bits and pieces that came out in that kind of way through the group, but I'd love to hear more about how you got into this and what some of your key kind of learnings or insights, and what you're doing with it now, but in any order you like.
Okay,
Over to
lovely.
you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to the conversation and just remembering that course because you had Joe Bailey,
That's right.
you- and it was Joe Bailey's book, The Serenity Principle, that introduced me to this understanding.
Me too.
Now, oh really?
Hmm.
Yeah. So every time, when you just have like a positive association, we talk about triggers for negatives, don't we? Well, Joe Bailey is like a positive trigger for me. I think about Joe Bailey, I think, yeah, that book is the book that changed my life. And so let me see. Uh so yes, I read that book and I didn't understand that the book was about the three principles. What I got very quickly in the book was that stress wasn't an external condition, it was an internal response. Now,
Mm.
at the time, I was thinking, don't be ridiculous. Do you know my life? Like, and I'm in this horrendously kind of difficult marriage and difficult stuff at work. And it felt like I was in a pincer move between these two very difficult forces. And I was reading this book, and it dawned on me when I was reading the book that if I didn't make some changes, nothing was going to change. That nothing outside of me was going to make me happy, but I had this power to do it.
Mm.
And I just had this mad idea to pass my driving test. In fact, to learn to drive, pass my test, and leave this like very difficult situation that I was in. And 6 months from reading that book, that was exactly what happened. Now, the chap who invited me to read the book is a guy called Mike Behan, who had started something called Jack Club, which was like just a thought in Dudley in the service that I was working at, and he'd said to me, read this book. It's a really good book. It's all about these three principles and what have you. And at the time, he'd said, "You do know the past doesn't exist, don't you, Cheri?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, of course, like totally." Um, you do know the future is only an idea, don't you, Chip? Yeah, 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 I do. Yeah, yeah. You do know this is the only moment that you've got. This is this moment now. I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, read this book then, and yeah, and that was just the beginning of I guess what I would say. It explained something for me. So in the depth of my addiction, I ended up committing this offence that's put me in prison for a number of years, like three and a half years, in fact, of a 7-year sentence. This is going back a long time ago. And partway through, it was like the last year of that, I had this experience whereby I'd walked up the hill and I'd looked in one direction, and it was like I went through a tunnel, and that was like all the way past. And then I looked in another direction, and it was like, that's all of the future. And I was standing on this hill, and my sense of it was that there was something of me, something within me that was eternal, that had always been here and would always be here. And I didn't have any explanation for what that was. So of course, as you've heard these stories before, right? You know, where we go looking. So we look at Buddhism. Is it that? Look at Reiki. Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? And I just had this sense that something was eternal, always been here, would always be here. And what that did for the moment that I was in, when life looks lost and people are talking about you in the past tense, and you think about yourself in the past tense, and you can't see a future, to know that something of you is eternal just put this whole kind of experience in a different context. And I began to consider different things about myself. So I reclaimed my dad's name. So that's where my name Gillings comes from. It's from my Jamaican side. That's my dad's name. And started to think about myself in a different way. Like there was more to me than just this surface story, or just this phenomenological story of, you know, offending and drug addiction and all of that. And yeah, that book really steered me in the direction of that's what this is. You know, this essence of you is eternal, and it's common to all beings that are alive. It's common to all living things, and it's an impulse to thrive. You know, like no matter what we do to ourselves, that impulse to thrive is what's at play. Yeah. So yeah.
And Cheri, I'm curious, when, and just because it's so interesting to hear about the insights that people have, when did that, were you literally walking up a hill, or was the sense of walking up a hill figurative? Where were you, what was going on for you when that occurred?
Walking up a hill. So at this particular prison, you come out of the prison onto the exercise area, and there is a small hill. And I came up the hill, and I turned one direction, and then the other direction, and it was instantaneous. I just knew, like, part of me has always been, it would always be here. And I started to draw it, you know, Christian, and I drew it like a little pea of light. Like, if that's all that there was within me, like, it was a good starting place.
Fabulous.
Can you imagine? Like,
it's so powerful hearing you talk about it, and it's, yeah, it's lovely, and it's you know, isn't it an extraordinary thing that you spontaneously had that insight in a prison? I mean, albeit you know, it might not be your worst moment in the prison, but you know, it's just, and I love that it's that any moment that essence of us can come through. It's extraordinary.
yes. So when I came out, I went to started volunteering at a centre for homeless people and people in, you know, suffering with addiction. And I saw this job advertised at a rehab. It was a Phoenix rehab in South Yorkshire. So I called them up, and they said, oh, you have to be, the job role was a fitness instructor in a residential rehab. And they said you needed to have a counselling qualification as well. I thought, who's got a mix like that of skills of, you know, fitness instructor and counselling? But they said, well, that's what you need. So I set off on a counselling journey, did a couple of years at a local college, and then went to university, did my counselling diploma. So that's how I got into the therapeutic kind of work. And then in 2003, I moved to the West Midlands and began working in drug and alcohol services. So I've been doing that since then in different guises, really. So from the ground up to kind of managing services to group therapy. Did that for 3 years, and then now I'm doing outreach work, like back on the front line in the coal face, if you like,
Mhm.
as well as doing my coaching practice. So I came into NLP in 2005, 2000. This is such a common story, isn't it? So I did
Me too.
NLP 5 to 6. I did my master's in NLP, and then I did clinical hypnotherapy. Again, all this wonderful, wonderful stuff, but all leading me into a particular direction. And then 2014, I did my coaching with a company called ITS in London. And yeah, again, really good course, really beautiful course. And that equipped me with lots of skills that you just kind of get to put to play in whatever you're doing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so then I started my coaching practice in 2017. Yeah, 2017. Yeah.
Wow. And now you're a coach, and you're working, but you're also working in a role in the
Yeah.
frontline services, and you have started a podcast. We were just speaking of that, but in the
Yeah.
last 6 months or so, 6 or 7 months, you've been going with that. So
So I started a podcast there, Saturday Soup for the Sister Soul.
oh,
And
that's great. I'll put a link to that in the notes so that anyone who wants to check that out can go
Christine,
get on it. Hmm.
oh, the premise is that every conversation has to be about soothing, healing, inspiring, nurturing, and elevating ourselves and each other. That's it. So the acronym is kind of SHINE. But
Hmm.
it really was driven by, if you know, almost a year ago now, George Floyd was murdered.
Hmm.
And like the world witnessed it because the world was very quiet at the time. And I thought it was really profound that, during like global lockdown, this thing happened, and everybody got to see. And so, whereas the whole conversation about Black Lives Matter had been around for many years prior to that, um, it wasn't in the mainstream,
Yeah.
put that front and center. But what it did for myself and Jackie and Janet really was like it threw us into a bit of a spin that this was happening in front of our eyes, and it was another murder. And for me, I started having like intrusive memories and kind of just thoughts coming in about stuff that had happened, and I was like, there's something going on here. Like if I went to a doctor and told them what I was experiencing, they'd be talking about PTSD.
Mhm.
Like, I wonder if like racialized PTSD is actually a thing. And it turns out that it's a recognized thing. And I started to read this wonderful book, My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Manicam, who's a psychotherapist from the States. Now, he trained on the Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm.
So deeply trauma informed, deeply into the kind of somatic kind of wisdom and experience, and super insightful. But it was on the back of that I decided, you know what, I'm going to move with this podcast, because soothing, healing is something that we need, and inspiration is in our own kind of, I want to say it's in the eye of the beholder, but in the heart of the beholder, and then the nurturing and elevating piece. Like, these are all the things that we need more of, but they're systems that we don't utilize. We very much run on the dopamine system. We very much, operate under the fight or flight response, but the soothing, healing, nurturing piece, we often don't spend enough time there. But one of the things about the principles is that people talk about coming home,
Mm.
and that is the space, isn't it, of where you feel soothed, you feel nourished in the space of home.
Yeah.
And when people discover that that's inside, that there's a place inside them that is whole and not contaminated and not damaged, that's powerful, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And not contingent on anything. Which, like you said, this is not about not making choices. It's not about choosing, you were talking about being in a challenging relationship, and I've also had that experience. And it's not about being comfortable being a doormat or anything like that, but it's in but just like that powerful insight that you spoke about occurred in a prison, that this essence of us is not contingent on having all your ducks in line, or everything.
Yeah. So when you said to bring a title,
Mm-hmm.
immediately it's okay to not be okay come to mind,
Yeah.
because we see it a lot, and we are talking a lot right now about mental health, and we're talking much more about suicide, and we're talking about post COVID, mental health concerns,
Mm-hmm.
and we say that it's okay to not be okay, but it's often said in a really flippant way, and when I hear it, I think there's a real deep truth in there that we miss. But I think that the three principles conversation, this inside out understanding, is the very essence of it's okay to not be okay.
Mm. Absolutely. That was one of my initial insights as well, where someone said, the implications of this, that you sort of, you'll continue to do that. And I thought, oh, phew. I'm there already, because I'd been trying to be, on a sort of trajectory of constant improvement, and brackets failed.
Yes.
I'm writing something else at the moment, Cheri, just interviewing lots of different teachers, and somebody just said that for her a massively helpful insight was to see Sid in a really bad mood, because she knew him to be an extraordinarily wise and kind and spiritual and touching person, but there was something magical about seeing the humanness, and I guess him being sort of okay with that too. Not pretending it didn't happen, not pouring pink paint over it or whatever, just, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So
But say more about it. It's okay to not be when it's not okay. I can't remember exactly the wording we used in the
yeah,
end.
but my friend has it on his wristband.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a mental health first aid trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always kind of like commenting about it, because the truth of it, I think, is huge. And then I'm curious about, so what is it? How come people don't know that it's okay not to be okay? So, like, what's in the way of people experiencing, okay, I'm okay with being uncomfortable? So there's a whole system, network, idea put out that, it's not okay to be sad, that we should be in the pursuit of happiness, that certain emotions are negative and other emotions are good.
Mm.
And the other thing at play is that we are a living, breathing system, you know? So you've often heard this, that what we are feeling is our thought in the moment. Yeah. Now, what I've noticed people do with that is they get into their heads. They're looking for the thought in the moment that's creating the feeling. But as I've been looking at some other modalities, and what I notice is that what we're feeling is energy in the moment.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, energy is just much more neutral. And when we think about energy, we're not looking for the thought. We don't go on this kind of cerebral search. It's like feeling, emotion is energy felt in the moment.
Mm.
Well, where is it felt then? Like, oh yeah, it's felt in the body. Okay, let's just notice that. And we go on an experience of noticing, because that's the capacity and power that we've got, isn't it? And I was thinking about Sid talking about the power of thought. And it struck me, this is just the other day as well, his language, the power of thought. And it struck me that power is energy,
Mm.
potential energy, isn't it?
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, there's something in that. Because when somebody is in a collapsed state, frozen, and we've heard about the elevator of consciousness, haven't we?
Mm.
And that's one way of looking at it. Today, we're talking about a ladder, like almost like a ladder of well-being. And we're talking about it in terms of a vagus nerve. And we're saying, you're collapsed, or you're mobilized, or you're ventral kind of, and you're okay. And they talk about it, and this is what I love, right? They talk about coming home to ventral. And Deb Dana talks about that the nervous system always wants to feel okay.
Mm.
So when you get stressed, it's a signal from the nervous system to slow down.
Mm.
Oh, like Nikki Bartley talks about that, like big teachers talk about that actually stress isn't anything to be alarmed by. It's like a warning light on the dashboard that says, hey, pause, pay attention. Now, if you go off looking for the thought that's creating the feeling of stress, you go into this kind of cerebral, intellectual search, and people don't feel better. I notice it so much. Oh, and they say things like, it's just my thinking. It doesn't help them one iota, have you noticed?
Yeah.
Well, what if it's just energy in the body? What if it's just energy and energetic experience? What if you can notice what and where that is? And start there. Go to the sensation. Oh, I'm getting some butterflies in my stomach. Okay. What else do you notice? Well, I'm noticing that my jaw's really tight and my shoulders are high. Okay. What else do you notice? Oh, my breathing's up in my chest. It's really shallow. And just people noticing that. It's like the system's asking for attention. And when it has the attention, the symptoms, the signs often dissipate. They often lessen. It's like, oh, yeah. Like your own system is asking for attention. It's not asking for fix, for remedy, for solution. It's asking for noticing.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all got that ability, consciousness. When it's focused, is attention, isn't it? If you've kind of like, if consciousness is just this flat plane of the sea of potential and becomes awareness, and then it becomes narrowed into focused attention. It's like sunlight becoming a sunbeam, isn't it? So you put the spotlight of your attention onto this and your spotlight of attention onto that. And often when people are struggling, they're ruminating on that particular thought. It's like, okay, your attention is with your thought, your attention is with your story, and the story is getting bigger and bigger. And, you've been there for days, maybe weeks and decades sometimes with this same story, huh? It's like just what happens if we just notice like there's energy at play.
Mm-hmm.
Search for the thought, just notice the end. So that's kind of.
Yeah, it kind of takes away. I mean, I have noticed exactly what you're talking about. That people go, well, how do I control the thought? And what that, to my mind, does is just sets off a whole mushrooming set of other thoughts which are invisible about effort and trying and judgment for failing and just this. But there's something much more just accepting and simple about just just that noticing, awareness, consciousness of it, but without with less judgment, with less
Yeah.
resistance.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's the truth of it, is the acceptance piece. Because the resistance is what makes things more sticky, isn't it? I love it actually. When recovery there's the serenity prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, grant me the serenity to accept. Like the peace to accept. And the wisdom to know the difference. So exactly as you said it, people get a funny idea that they're responsible for their thought.
Yeah.
And no, they're so not responsible for their thought. Like, it's occurring, it's happening, it's an energy, it's a force of energy taking some form in a moment, and it will pass.
And we're not responsible for that either.
No,
We don't know what we're going to be thinking next or how long it's going to stick around.
no, we don't. That's true, isn't it? Like, we don't know how long a good mood's going to last.
Or a bad one, or even just a neutral thing like what you've got to get in the supermarket if you haven't got your list.
I think it's so permissive. It's okay to not be okay. And then, so when people struggle with that, what I understand is that people have a small window of tolerance initially, for a small window of tolerance for feeling good as well as for feeling bad too. So, one of the things that we talk about is helping people to feel good. So when, like, it's quite funny really, like, I'm working with some folks now who actually, the very best thing that I can take to them is my good mood, is my good feeling. And actually, yeah, that is the very best thing that I can take. So that actually, if after leaving the sense is, oh, I don't feel any worse for having met you, maybe I feel a little bit better for having had a conversation. Good. Because the dip in and out of feeling good, it can be alarming for some people. It can be alarming to feel good when you're in early recovery. It can be feel good when you've been depressed for years. It can be alarming to feel good if your story is, I suffer from anxiety and depression. It's like, okay, let's get good. Let's get better at feeling good. And it's still okay to not feel okay, right? When you're feeling good and it's okay to not be okay, you don't worry about not feeling okay, which is what happens to us when we are feeling good. We're worried that it's not going to last. Yeah.
Do you think that changes, Cheri, with that an understanding of the principles? Because it seems to me that that was probably a true characterization. Because it wasn't as if I reached the principles and never had a good day. you know. But it seems to me that in today, that there's something powerful about just an understanding of how the system works.
Yeah.
So my guess is that both you and I are feeling, pretty good, you're right, in this moment. But we're able to talk about, we can talk without any kind of apprehension. If we know we'll have a bad mood at some point, and we're not concerned about it. We're not trying to hang on to this moment or make the call last forever, because we know it's actually nothing to do with the call. And so, for me, that's maybe one of the things that's different. It's like the capacity to see the whole with a bit more perspective, certainly, than I had. And of course, in my case, all my happiness was attached to people, places, and things.
Yes.
I mistakenly thought.
Yes. I think that, so to use like a modern term, so I think that what the understanding does is increases your window of tolerance. So I can tolerate feeling good, and I can better tolerate feeling bad. And the more understanding, the more, and there's no end to that, is there? You can keep growing and growing and growing in that window of tolerance, what we call the window of tolerance today. And I think any understanding into how the system works helps you to do that. So, if somebody is following a particular program for their mental health or for their well-being, fine, understand how the system is working. They will feel something better. What I think is different about the principles is it's fundamental. It's why everything works.
Yeah.
When people say, oh, so I had this kind of therapy, it was so good and it really worked. I think, well, yeah, because everything works because of this, right? There's nothing outside of consciousness. There can't be. So it's always at work. It's always in expression. And And therefore, whatever widens your awareness of how we work, that's gonna improve our experience, gonna improve our well-being.
Mm.
So one of the lovely things happened the other day. I'm doing this course with One Thought, and Christine. I think you're doing something with Christine, right? Christine Heath.
She did one of these conversations a couple of months ago. Yeah. Hmm.
So so she was leading this webinar thing, and she just got into this super chilled place and started talking. And of course, everybody listening just got into a super chilled place with her. and I was just like, that's that thing of being in a good feeling and speaking from your good feeling,
Mm.
even though she's not in the same room as us. Like there's something about what we are experiencing of her that we're in dialogue with at levels of consciousness we don't even understand.
Mm. Mm.
So or we can't perceive those levels of consciousness. When we talk about like today's language, they call it co-regulation.
Mhm.
You come to somebody in a good feeling and they're in a bad feeling, then your good feeling is connecting and has the power to help them come out of that.
Yeah.
So we talk about connection, don't we?
Yeah,
As
and I
being,
wonder if that occurs. What do you think it's sort of so much finding a good feeling or more sort of allowing all the other crap to dissolve, to but that also implies it's not about putting on a front.
no.
So had I shown up for this call tonight and been up in my head, even just being authentic about that is
Yes.
is the start of the dissolving, because I know it's not me. I know it enough to know that it doesn't matter. It's just energy. It's just stuff.
Yes. Yes. So because you know that, you're not disturbed by a bad mood,
Mhm.
or you're not disturbed by so your system doesn't get disturbed by that experience. So today I was on a Teams meeting or a Zoom call, and I was having all kinds of technical challenges trying to come to it. And I said, "Oh, I'm here." And my colleague said to me, "Oh, you look really flustered." And I said, "I am really flustered." Because it's an IT challenge, and it's like a powerless over IT, right? and but just owning it, and we settle down.
Mhm.
If I get into my thinking about being really flustered and, oh my goodness, what is this clinical psychologist going to think about me coming to the meeting late because I'm really flustered? I can't tell. Like that would have put me in a completely different spin. But there's an okayness around, isn't there? In terms of there's an acceptance of it's okay to be flustered. It's okay to say, "Oh, I've got really flustered because I've got an IT." Like all of it is okay until I make it not okay.
Yeah, and I guess we probably all know the difference between someone just say, "Oh, I'm here. This has happened and this is going on," versus "I'm here and everything's fine and it's wonderful." Because the first one's authentic and the second one is, there's some part of us that kind of hears the tinny rattle.
Ooh, so what you're reminding me of now is the things at play of I can over-identify with my mood. I can over-identify with my emotions and think that that's the totality of what and who I am.
Mm.
But what the three principles points us to and what my experience tells me is that something about me is eternal, unharmed and undamaged, untainted, uncontaminated, regardless of. So then, what I have some choice in what I'm going to identify with in any moment. Like if it's energy that I'm experiencing, like some part of me is aware of that thing that I'm experiencing. So I can't be the thing that I'm seeing because I'm seeing it. So, it's so lovely, right? Because Sid Banks talked about psychology changing and the world of kind of psychiatry and therapy changing. And it has. And in so many ways, like we are looking at, I want to say, the impulse to thrive being underneath people's out here experiences and out here presentation and out here personalities. Like there's something at play underneath all of that. And you know, what's his name? Richard Schwartz calls it the self with a capital S, which I just find fascinating, right? It's like, oh, because that's what I would say that power is. That's the God spark or the self with a capital S,
Mm.
the energizing force. Now I can show up totally flustered and crazy. It's never all of who I am. And I think that's what the principles shows us as well. It has different ways of wording it,
Mhm.
but it's saying, you know what, you're not your thought. Like this, you're more than that. You're not your feelings. You have feelings, and you're more than that. And so we get the permission again, it's okay
Mhm.
to be okay. Because you're more than your uncomfortable experience at this time.
Mhm.
You're more than your best or worst idea.
And perhaps it's that authenticity is one of the roots, if you like. I had this experience many years ago where I literally saw a picture of a lamp, and then I knew there are many. It was I literally had a sort of embodied feeling of there's many roots to the top of the mountain, but authenticity is one of the ways that we become less identified with the superficial and go to because we're the, being able to say without shame or judgment, I'm flustered or I ballsed up or whatever, is an acknowledgement that it doesn't matter that much, and it's coming from something different than um that superficial place. It's coming to my mind from something deeper, and it's one of the ways back to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And in that sense, I think, like, to me now, like, you feel really calm. In this conversation, oh, you feel really calm. So was you, oh, you really calm? Oh, I'm really calm.
You really can.
and even, oh, so even when I'm out on the streets, kind of seeing people in some difficult situations, like there's some, like, I know that they've got the same thing within them that I have within me, that you've got within you. So, like, I just find that's a really helpful thing to know as well.
Yeah.
That even if that person in front of me believes they're not okay, I know it's okay for them not to be okay. I don't have to dive into fix it mode and problem solving mode and too much responsibility mode. And I think that's why this understanding can be really helpful for people who are caregivers and working in the professions of helping, you
Mm.
know, frontline ambulance, police, emergency services, or whether they're working in hospitals, or whether they're kind of care workers, or, social workers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If I get alarmed by your alarm, I am not going to be able to help you in
Yeah.
any form.
And there's so much confusion implicit in that, and that's where the secondary trauma comes from, because you're trying to do things that are impossible, like change other people in a way that they perhaps are not ready for or don't want, and
Yeah,
so you're living a life of frustration,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
very different from connecting with someone, knowing that they too have absolutely everything that they need within them, and offering this, and being completely cool with whether they take it or whether they don't, whether they're interested, or interested even in this moment, and it might be later, but none of that is, if you know that your well-being isn't contingent on whatever the choices they make, there's something much lighter, and ironically much more effective, I think, in
yeah.
what you have to offer. Yeah. Cheri, are you up for some questions? Some people have joined us over the call,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether. if you are on and you would like to ask, share, question, please do come in. I can't actually see you all, so just if you want to come in, please do just unmute yourself and jump in. It'd be lovely to hear from you.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Steve.
Hello, Steve.
Hi. How you doing? Well, I know how you're doing, obviously, as you're on here, and you're doing well. Yeah, there was something you said earlier, Cheri, and there's I can't remember exactly how you said it. It was about why people kind of they buy into this, that, and the other about wanting to feel good, avoiding the bad.
Yeah.
And you said something which has always struck me, but you reminded me of it again, about the phrase of the pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that just gives you the idea that happiness isn't where you are. It's something that you have to chase.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that extends to other things. So you're chasing that nice feeling. The insinuation is a nice feeling isn't within you. And I suppose then for some people, it'll be that bad feelings are within you because happiness is out there. I'm chasing happiness. So what does that leave within myself? The crap I want to avoid like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when you said that, that just kind of popped into my head. Although I'm just thinking about it now because that's a phrase that's in the American Constitution. So therefore, it's a thing that's pretty well permeated within Western cultures and stuff. So it makes me wonder what kind of things are there that have a great big massive influence upon different cultures and in different
Mm-hmm.
situations and
Mm-hmm.
what's allowable and stuff.
Mm. So what you're bringing to mind for me is that, like, there can't be anything outside of consciousness, isn't it, Steve? So, you know, people who believe in God.
Yes.
Right? So for me, consciousness is like that thing. Like, there's nothing. If there's something outside of God, then God is not God. If there's something outside of consciousness, then consciousness is not consciousness, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it looks to me like we're born in these physical bodies, into these physical bodies. So it seems to me like consciousness shapes matter.
Mm.
And there is a level at which human beings have evolved to pursue good feelings. Like, there's something quite natural within human beings to go after good things. You know, that's how we've got from, you know, walking to flying. That's how we've got from Earth to the moon. So there's something like there's almost something dismissive in the idea that, but it's not, it doesn't need to be dismissed. Like, there's nothing outside of consciousness. Like, we are built for thriving. We just are, you know, as a species, like it's within us. Isn't it funny how you can look at a newborn baby and a chemical goes off in your body and a chemical goes off in the newborn baby's body? Like what is that about? Like, isn't it funny that we've got such thing as mirror neurons built into the system? isn't it funny that there's such a thing that exists as neuroplasticity? That you can change your brain by changing your mind. Like the power of us, like we are built with the capacity to live a wonderful life. And there's something about understanding that there is factors at play in the world that people don't experience themselves to be in power and able to live that way, able to pursue their best life. And the risk is that we dismiss that on the basis of it's all thought. That, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Because just like you've said, we're a vast expression of consciousness, right? The one and then the 10,000 things. And all of the 10,000 things are made of consciousness too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get the dismissal of it's like a religion thing, isn't it? I don't get the dismissal of other religions. I don't get the dismissal of other practices because there's nothing outside the consciousness. How can there be? Can there be?
Whilst you were talking, something just popped into my head. Yeah, the way that people kind of fixate on wanting just to feel one type of thing and not feel the other type of thing.
Yeah, man.
It's kind of like having a rainbow made of one color.
Yes.
But it can't. But that wouldn't be a rainbow because it's a whole range of different colors.
But what we're saying is, it's okay not to be okay. So if you show up in the world and you only paint with grey, guess what? I'm making that okay. I'm not judging that. That's like, because what people often do is they feel like they've only got grey to paint with. All of my is grey right now, and it's dreadful. And they then judge the greyness of it.
Yeah.
Supposing grey is okay.
Yeah. And supposing people can realize that grey is made up of different colors.
Okay.
So therefore the possibility for something else to emerge is there.
So
but whilst you're feeling grey, it's okay to feel grey.
Yes, whilst you're experiencing all the shades of grey, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because the acceptance helps you to move from the collapsed state, which is very grey.
Mm-hmm.
Acceptance helps you to move up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the elevator of consciousness, acceptance helps you to move up, you know?
Yeah. And the ability to know that you can see that's what's happening is going to help you to move when you feel like moving, when you want to.
Yeah. Because movement's possible. Isn't that what Christian was saying earlier? You know, to know that movement is possible.
Yes.
The understanding lets you know that, doesn't it?
Well, I'll just let Christine come back in on this now, and I'll just mute myself.
Steve, it's Christian. You should know that. We've known each other.
God, what did I just say? Okay, I'll accept my redundancy at the end of the month. Sorry.
Great question. Thank you. Thank you. It's unbelievably, Cheri. It's 10:02, so our time is rapidly running out. I think we've certainly got time to hear from someone else. It would be lovely to from my and unless there's something you want to expand on with that. I see Barbara and Lynn are there. Either of you interested in coming in tonight? It's tonight here in the UK. Barbara.
Hi. I'm glad to meet you, Cheri. Thank you so much for this. It's been wonderful. And I am a psychotherapist. You may know Kristen and I wrote a book together. And so I see a lot of what you're talking about, that people really, and we have this idea that somehow negative feelings aren't okay. And, you know, I see that all the time. I see people come in and they say, you know, I'm depressed and anxious. And I'm like, well, so am I. Sometimes, you know, I mean, yeah, okay. And it really takes people aback at first when you start to shift that. Because the more we can normalize that that's the human condition, that's the way it is, you know, we can just, it just sheds, like people can just shed all this thinking that they have, that, you know, somehow they're so screwed up on, you know, just like irretrievably screwed up. And now you're having a completely different conversation. So it's always good to hear this message again and again and get it out in the world as much as we can, that it's the most normal thing in the world to have these shifting moods. And who said that you're not supposed to feel that way? You know, like, where'd you get that idea? So anyway, thank you so much. It's really been nice to meet you and to hear you tonight. It's been great.
Lovely to meet you as well.
That's great, Barbara. Thank you. Thank you. Cheri, just for the last 5 minutes or so, unless anybody's got a burning desire to share, in which case please do come in. But if that doesn't happen, Cheri, I'd just love to give it back to you to kind of finish us off for the evening, so to speak. Figuratively, if not literally.
When I just would like that. I just can't get past it. That it's when we say it's okay not to be okay, because we see it such a lot, that even if just we remember on this call that actually it's not just a fancy slogan, it's really true. Like if it was just that, like it's really true. And if it is really true, what then? Like, what do you no longer have to be afraid of? Because that's true. You don't have to be afraid of feeling bad. You don't have to be afraid of other people feeling bad. Actually, you can take steps to make yourself safe or well. And like, I just think it's so permissive.
Yeah.
So permissive.
And that permission and that acceptance is just deeply healing. That sense of being okay and feeling that acceptance from someone else. Just feeling that. And ironically, well, just it was so funny when Barbara said, "You're depressed." I know, so am I. But there's something deeply connecting about that. It's funny because it's true, and it puts the lie to this awful, unique thing that only the patient in the chair or the client in the street or whatever is feeling. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very cool. Very cool. It feels as though we've maybe reached a point that would be nice to just draw this to a close. And I once again, thank you. It's been an absolutely excellent call for me. I've loved it. I love that opportunity to sort of reflect and have the learning and just the experience of being connected. And thank you everybody who's joined the call, and whether you've asked questions or not. And if you'd like to, is there a preferred place if people want to contact you, Cheri? That I'm going to put your details on the notes, but
yeah, they can come to me via Facebook, Inner Space Coach, or on Instagram at Inner Space Coach as well.
Okay, no, great. Well, thank you very much. I'll put those on the. I'm going to put a link to the recording in the Facebook group, and also YouTube. I'll put on the notes there. So thanks very much. And I see lots of thank yous in the various thank yous in the chat. So Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great day, whatever's left of it, where you are. And Cheri, thank you again, and see you soon, I hope.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Cheri. God bless.